Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today we're going deep on social protection programs, but with a twist.
The twist.
Yeah. We're focusing on how they work in developing countries.
Okay.
We've got excerpts from academic research papers, some global reports, and even some field study summaries.
A good mix.
Yeah, a real mix to get you thinking.
Cool.
So you'll understand not just what these programs are, but why they operate so differently in developing economies.
Yeah.
And the unique hurdles they face.
It's a complex landscape.
It is.
For sure.
Yeah.
But also a surprisingly creative one.
Exactly. And get this. Have you ever heard of giving someone a goat as a poverty-fighting tool?
A goat.
Yeah. Or why just handing out cash
Huh.
might work better than giving food in some situations.
Really?
We're about to unpack all that and more.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
These are exactly the kinds of counterintuitive findings that make this field so compelling.
All right, let's dive in. First up is the targeting challenge. So figuring out who actually needs help.
Yeah. In developed countries, it's often about income levels, right?
Right.
But in developing countries, that's a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to design a program in a rural village where most people are, farmers or market vendors.
Right.
Their income isn't neatly documented like a regular paycheck.
Yeah.
So how do you even begin to assess who needs support?
That is a really good question.
Yeah.
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
One of the research papers we have breaks down the choices governments face
Okay.
using a model that considers information problems.
Information, or the lack thereof, is the crux of the issue.
I see. Yeah.
The paper highlights 3 common targeting approaches.
Okay.
One is using observable characteristics to predict income.
Okay.
Another is relying on self-reporting, or simply providing universal transfers to everyone.
Okay.
Each has its own set of trade-offs, and the optimal choice really depends heavily on the quality of available information. It's like almost like a detective game, like piecing together clues to figure out who needs help the most.
Yeah.
But as you can imagine, it's far from perfect.
It's not easy.
Yeah, so walk me through these approaches.
Okay, let's start with proxy means testing, or PMT.
PMT.
It's like trying to deduce someone's income based on the clues you can see.
Okay.
Do they have livestock? A tin roof? A well?
Yeah.
These observable characteristics become proxies for income.
That makes sense, using those visible indicators to try and gauge someone's economic situation.
Right.
But it feels like a system ripe for errors.
It absolutely is. Someone might have inherited land, for example, but be struggling to make ends meet.
Oh.
Or a sudden illness could wipe out their savings, even if their house looks, relatively well off.
Yeah.
That's where the model gets interesting.
Okay.
It recognizes that these proxies are imperfect and governments have to factor in the potential for error.
So it's not just about choosing a method, but like understanding its limitations and adjusting accordingly.
It is, yeah.
What about self-reporting?
So self-reporting seems straightforward,
Right.
but it relies heavily on honesty.
Yeah, of course.
People might underreport their income to qualify for aid or overreport their needs.
Yeah.
And in many developing countries, there's a deeply ingrained mistrust of official systems,
Right.
making honest reporting even less likely.
So it's like a trust tug of war.
Yeah.
Of course, there's the universal approach, giving everyone the same benefit, no questions asked.
Yeah, that seems simple,
It does.
but I bet it comes with its own set of complications.
It does, yeah.
While universal transfers eliminate the entire targeting problem,
Uh-huh.
they can be incredibly expensive,
Yeah.
especially for countries with limited resources.
Right, so you end up helping those who don't need it,
Exactly.
which stretches those resources even thinner.
It does.
So is there a magic bullet for targeting in developing countries?
Well,
It sounds like a no-win situation.
here's where the research offers a surprising insight.
Okay.
Using a combination of these approaches,
Oh, okay.
even self-reporting can actually be the most effective way to go.
Wait, really? Even with the potential for bias in self-reporting,
Yeah.
that's completely counterintuitive.
It is. But remember, the model considers the cost of misreporting,
Okay.
and it recognizes that this cost isn't the same for everyone.
Right.
Some people might have more to lose if they're caught being dishonest.
Sure.
Others might face higher, social or psychological costs
I see.
for, for misreporting.
So it's almost like a game theory approach,
It is.
weighing the potential benefits of misreporting against the potential costs.
Exactly. And the model suggests that governments can actually use this to their advantage.
Interesting.
By combining approaches and weighting them appropriately. They can significantly improve targeting accuracy, even with imperfect information.
It's like finding that sweet spot between precision and practicality, acknowledging that perfect targeting is just not realistic.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this highlights a key difference between developed and developing countries.
Okay.
In developed countries, the worry is often about how these programs might discourage people from working.
Yeah.
But in developing countries, that concern takes a backseat to the more immediate challenge of simply figuring out who needs help.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
If you can't even identify the people in need, worrying about work disincentives seems a bit premature.
Exactly. And this shift in focus has a huge impact on how these programs are designed and implemented.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just about tweaking existing models. It's about coming up with entirely new approaches that address the unique information challenges
I see.
of developing economies.
Let's get into some real-world examples of these targeting strategies.
Sure.
Geographic targeting seems to be a common one,
That's right.
especially in larger countries.
Yeah, think of it this way. If you're trying to distribute aid quickly and efficiently, you might target entire regions based on their overall poverty levels. It's a simple approach that relies on readily available data,
Right.
like average incomes or poverty rates for specific areas.
It seems like a logical starting point,
It is.
using existing data to pinpoint areas
Yeah.
with the greatest need.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine it has its limitations.
Absolutely. The main drawback is its lack of precision.
Okay.
Even within a poor region, you'll have households with varying levels of need.
Right.
Some might be relatively well off, while others are struggling to survive.
Yeah.
Geographic targeting doesn't capture those nuances.
So you risk missing those who are truly in need,
You do.
while potentially helping those who are less so.
Exactly. And that's where proxy means testing comes back into play.
So instead of just looking at the average income for an entire region,
Hmm.
you use a statistical model to predict income for individual households based on those observable characteristics we
Right.
discussed earlier.
It's a more targeted approach,
It is.
but it still relies on data and assumptions.
Sure.
So it's not without its flaws.
And then there's community-based targeting,
Yeah,
which seems like a radical departure
it is.
from these more data-driven approaches.
This one is fascinating because it flips the script.
Okay.
Instead of relying on external data or statistical models, you tap into local knowledge.
Okay.
The idea is that communities themselves might be best equipped to identify their most vulnerable members.
It's like crowdsourcing poverty identification,
It is.
but I imagine that comes with its own set of risks.
You're thinking of elite capture, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The fear that local leaders might rig the system
Yeah.
to benefit themselves or their cronies
Right.
rather than those who truly need help.
It's a valid concern, and it's one that researchers have studied extensively. But what's surprising is that elite capture, while a legitimate risk,
Yeah.
might not be as widespread or as impactful as initially thought.
Hold on. Are you saying that those fears might be overblown?
There's evidence to suggest that yes.
Worry?
Field experiments in Indonesia, for instance, found that even when local elites had more control over targeting,
Okay.
it didn't drastically change who received benefits or how effective the program was overall.
So even with the potential for bias, the benefits of local knowledge and community involvement might outweigh the risks of elite capture, at least in some cases.
Exactly. And this speaks to a larger point about the importance of context.
Yeah.
What works in one community or country might not work in another.
So it's about finding the right approach for this specific situation,
It is.
understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each method, and being willing to adapt.
That's a great way to put it.
All this talk about targeting makes me realize just how much we take for granted in developed countries.
Yeah.
Having reliable income data seems like a luxury when you consider the challenges faced by developing economies.
It's a stark contrast. And it highlights the need for social protection programs that are tailored to the specific information constraints of developing countries.
Yeah.
It's not just about replicating what works elsewhere. It's about being innovative and responsive to the unique challenges on the ground.
Yeah, those are really good points.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've tackled the targeting puzzle.
We have.
Now, let's dive into the types of social protection programs themselves
Right.
and how they're making a difference.
Right.
I have to admit, I'm really curious about these unconditional cash transfers.
UCTs.
Yeah, UCTs.
Yeah.
The idea of just giving people cash, no strings attached,
Right.
can seem radical, especially in developed economies.
It's an approach that's gaining traction.
Yeah.
And you're right. It
Yeah.
can raise eyebrows.
They can.
But the research on UCTs in developing countries is revealing some really fascinating and surprisingly positive results.
Like what? I'm ready to have my assumptions challenged.
Well, for starters,
Yeah.
one of the biggest concerns about cash transfers in general is that they'll discourage people from working.
Right.
The thinking goes, if you're getting free money, why bother working?
Right. That's the classic welfare queen stereotype.
Exactly.
But I have a feeling the reality is far more nuanced.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Numerous studies have shown that UCTs don't actually lead to any significant reductions in work effort.
God.
In some cases, people actually work more after receiving cash transfers.
That's remarkable.
It is.
What explains that
Well,
that increase in work effort?
it seems the cash gives people a bit of breathing room,
Okay.
a buffer to invest in their businesses, cover transportation costs to get to work, or even just purchase tools and supplies that help them be more productive.
It's like that saying,
Yeah.
give a man a fish and you feed him for a day.
Right.
Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. But in this case, it's more like give a woman some capital and she'll build a thriving business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this has long-term implications.
Right.
Instead of just providing a temporary safety net,
Right.
UCTs can actually help people escape poverty permanently.
Wow.
They can free up time and resources that allow people to pursue opportunities and build a more secure future.
That's powerful.
It is.
But what about the temptation goods argument? The worry that people will use the cash for alcohol or cigarettes
Right.
instead of essential needs.
That's another common concern,
Yeah.
and one that's been thoroughly debunked by the research.
Okay.
Studies consistently show that recipients don't spend any more on so-called temptation goods after receiving cash transfers.
Huh?
In fact, there's evidence that they often spend less on these items,
Okay.
perhaps because they feel more financially secure
Right.
and less stressed.
So it's not just about giving people money. It's about giving them agency and trusting them to make the best choices for themselves and their families.
It is.
That's a powerful statement.
It goes to the heart of what makes UCTs so effective.
Yeah.
They recognize the dignity and intelligence of recipients.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of dictating how the money should be spent,
Right.
they empower people to address their own needs and priorities.
And that empowerment, that sense of control,
Right.
can be transformative.
It can't.
But let's get specific.
Okay.
What kind of tangible impacts are we seeing
Yeah.
from these UCT programs?
Well, studies in Kenya, for example,
Yeah.
have shown that UCTs lead to significant improvements in a whole range of outcomes.
Like what?
We're talking about increased income, higher levels of consumption, improved food security,
Okay.
and even better psychological well-being.
Wow.
These impacts are real and in many cases lasting.
Those are impressive results.
Yeah,
It sounds like UCTs are more than just a safety net.
they are.
They're a catalyst for positive change.
That's a great way to put it.
And the exciting thing is that the benefits extend beyond just the direct recipients.
They do.
What do you mean?
Well, for starters, UCTs can strengthen informal insurance networks within communities.
Okay.
When one household receives a cash transfer, they're often more able and willing to help out their neighbors in times of need.
It's like a ripple effect
It is.
of generosity fostering a stronger sense of community
Yeah,
and mutual support.
precisely.
And there's also evidence that UCTs can boost local economies.
There is.
Huh.
Well, the influx of cash can stimulate demand,
Okay.
leading to increased business activity and job creation.
It's almost like a micro-stimulus package.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But of course, no program is without its potential downsides.
Right.
One concern with large-scale UCT programs is the impact on prices.
Okay.
If a significant portion of households suddenly have more purchasing power, it can lead to inflation,
Right.
particularly for essential goods.
That's a valid point.
Yep.
It's like that classic supply and demand.
Exactly. If
Jada.
demand increases faster than supply, prices go up.
So there's a risk that UCTs could inadvertently hurt those who don't receive the transfers,
Right.
particularly if they're already struggling to afford basic necessities.
That's an important consideration.
It is.
And it highlights the need to monitor these programs closely and be prepared to adjust them as needed.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between providing support
Yeah,
and minimizing unintended consequences.
it is.
Speaking of different approaches, let's talk about conditional cash transfers, or CCTs.
Right.
They've been hailed as a major innovation in
Mhm.
social protection.
CCTs are a fascinating twist on the cash transfer model.
Yeah.
They build on the idea of providing direct cash assistance, but add a layer of conditionality.
So it's like, we'll give you this cash, but you have to do X, Y, and Z in return.
Exactly.
What kinds of conditions are we talking about?
The most common conditions relate to children's health and education. Families might be required to ensure their children attend school regularly, participate in health checkups, or receive necessary vaccinations.
So it's like incentivizing investment
It is.
in human capital.
Yeah.
Encouraging families to prioritize their children's well-being. And I'm guessing the research shows that it works.
It does.
Okay.
CCTs have a remarkable track record of success.
Okay.
Numerous studies have shown that they can significantly increase school enrollment, reduce dropout rates,
Wow.
improve children's nutritional status, and even have long-term positive impacts on things like earning potential and cognitive development.
That's a lot of bang for your buck.
It is.
It seems like CCTs address both immediate needs and long-term outcomes.
They do.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
is it the conditionality itself
Right.
that's driving these positive results, or is it simply the extra cash?
That's a million-dollar question,
Yeah.
and it's one that researchers have spent a lot of time trying to unpack. The evidence suggests that conditionality does play a role.
Okay.
It's not just about giving families money.
Mm-hmm.
It's about nudging them towards behaviors that benefit their children.
It's like that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
But in this case, the cash incentive makes the water look a lot more appealing.
Exactly. And there's evidence that conditionality can be particularly beneficial for those who are most disadvantaged within families,
Okay.
like girls and younger children.
Oh, okay.
A study in Burkina Faso found that CCTs led to a significant increase in school enrollment for girls, who are often overlooked when it comes to educational opportunities.
So CCTs can not only improve overall well-being,
Right.
but also help level the playing field within families,
Exactly.
ensuring that all children have a chance to succeed.
It does.
But I imagine there are also potential downsides to this conditional approach.
There are.
Like what?
One concern is that conditionality can inadvertently exclude those who need help the most, but are unable to meet the requirements.
Okay.
For example, a family might not be able to afford the transportation costs to get their child to a distant health clinic.
Yeah.
Or a child might have to work to help support the family
Right.
and can't meet the school attendance requirements.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
It is.
We're trying to encourage positive behavior, but you also risk creating a new kind of inequality where those who are already struggling are further disadvantaged.
That's a crucial point.
It is.
And it highlights the need to carefully consider the design of CCT programs.
Right.
And to ensure that the conditions are realistic and achievable for the target population.
It's about striking that delicate balance between providing a safety net and promoting positive change.
It is.
What if there was a way to soften that conditionality, to nudge people without pushing them away?
That's where the intriguing concept of labeled cash transfers comes in.
Oh, labeled cash transfers.
Think of it as a middle ground between UCTs and CCTs.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
With labeled cash transfers, the conditions are stated, but they're not strictly enforced. It's more about communicating the intended purpose of the transfer, setting expectations, and appealing to people's sense of responsibility.
It's like saying, we hope you'll use this money to invest in your children's education, but we trust you to make the best decisions for your family.
Precisely. And surprisingly,
Yeah.
research has shown that this approach can be quite effective.
Okay.
A study in Morocco, for instance, found that labeled cash transfers significantly reduced school dropout rates,
Wow.
even without strict enforcement mechanisms.
So sometimes a gentle nudge can be just as powerful as a rigid rule.
It's a reminder that trust and agency can be powerful motivators.
So we've covered UCTs and CCTs, both offering direct cash assistance with varying degrees of conditionality.
Right.
What other approaches are commonly used in developing countries?
Another option is in-kind transfers,
Okay.
which involve providing goods or services directly instead of cash.
So instead of giving people money,
Right.
you give them food, clothing, healthcare,
Yeah,
other essential goods and services.
exactly.
And at first glance, that might seem less efficient
It might.
than cash transfers.
Yeah. After all, cash gives people the flexibility to choose what they need most.
So why would governments opt for in-kind transfers?
There are several reasons.
Okay.
Sometimes it comes down to voter preferences.
Okay.
Voters might be more supportive of programs that provide tangible goods,
Yeah.
seeing it as a more responsible use of public funds.
It's that perception that cash might be misused,
Right.
while food or medicine will be used for its intended purpose.
That's right. And there's also the element of paternalism.
Okay.
Policymakers might believe that they know better than recipients how to spend the money wisely.
Yeah.
So they opt to provide goods and services that they deem essential.
It's like saying, we'll give you what we think you need rather than trusting you to make your own choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in some cases, in-kind transfers can actually be more efficient than cash.
Yeah.
If a government can leverage its purchasing power to procure goods and services at a lower cost, it might make sense to provide those directly to beneficiaries.
Like a bulk discount for essential goods.
Precisely.
And in certain situations, in-kind transfers can also be a powerful tool for self-targeting.
It can.
Self-targeting, how does that work?
Imagine a program that provides subsidized bread.
Okay.
Richer households might not be interested in buying subsidized bread,
Okay.
even if it's cheaper,
Yeah.
because they can afford to buy, higher quality bread.
Right.
This self-selection mechanism helps ensure that the benefits go to those who need them most.
It's like creating a system where the benefit itself acts as a filter,
It does.
attracting those who truly need it
Yeah.
and discouraging those who don't.
Exactly.
But it's important to acknowledge that in-kind transfers also come with their own set of challenges.
They do, like
Woo.
delivering goods and services effectively, especially
Yeah.
in remote or logistically challenging areas,
Yeah.
can be complex and costly.
It's not as simple as just transferring funds electronically.
Right.
You have to deal with storage, transportation,
Right.
spoilage, and a whole host of other logistical hurdles.
You got it. And that's why the choice between cash and in-kind transfers is not always straightforward.
Right.
It depends on the specific context, the nature of the good or service being provided,
Mm-hmm.
and the capacity of the government to manage a more complex delivery system.
It's about weighing the pros and cons
Yeah.
and finding the right approach for the specific situation.
Exactly.
Okay, now I'm really curious about workfare programs.
Okay.
This seems like a very different approach to social protection.
Workfare programs, sometimes called public works programs,
Mm-hmm.
are all about providing employment opportunities as a way to provide income support and build skills.
Right.
They often involve labor-intensive projects like building roads, schools, or irrigation systems.
It's like a win-win.
It is.
You're giving people jobs and income while also creating
Yeah.
valuable public assets.
Exactly. And one of the key features of workfare programs is their self-targeting nature.
Self-targeting again. Remind me how that works in this context.
Well, people who have better job options in the private sector
Mm-hmm.
are less likely to participate in a workfare program.
Okay.
The wages are typically low, and the work can be physically demanding.
Yeah.
This acts as a natural filter, attracting those who are truly in need of a job and income.
So it's not just about providing a safety net. It's
No.
about creating opportunities
Yeah.
for those who might otherwise be excluded
From the
there.
labor market. A classic example is India's Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act,
MGNREGI.
or MGNREGI.
I've heard of that.
It guarantees 100 days of employment per year
Wow.
for rural households.
That's a massive undertaking.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's been credited with providing a lifeline for millions of people,
Okay.
particularly during economic downturns.
That's remarkable.
Yeah,
But I imagine there are also challenges
there are.
associated with workfare programs.
One key consideration is the productivity of the work itself.
Okay.
Are these programs creating assets that are truly valuable to the community?
Right.
Or are they just make work projects
Yeah.
with little lasting impact?
Because if the work isn't productive,
Yeah,
you're essentially just transferring money without generating any real economic benefits.
exactly. And another concern is the potential impact on labor markets.
Okay. How so?
Well, if workfare programs offer wages that are higher than what private employers are willing to pay,
Yeah.
it could discourage people from seeking private sector jobs.
I see. So instead of creating new jobs,
Yeah,
you might just be shifting people from one sector to another.
that's right. But on the flip side,
Okay.
workfare programs can also have positive spillover effects.
Okay.
on labor markets.
How so?
Well, if they increase the demand for labor in a particular area,
Okay.
it could push up wages and improve working conditions for everyone,
Got it.
including those not participating in the program.
It's that supply and demand dynamic again.
Exactly. And the research on workfare programs reflects this complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Some studies have shown that they can crowd out private employment,
Okay.
while others have found that they can lead to higher wages and better working conditions
I see.
in certain cases.
So it really depends on the specific design and implementation
It does.
of the program.
The key is to ensure that the work itself is productive,
Mm-hmm.
that the wages are set appropriately,
All right.
and that the program is designed to complement rather than compete with
Yeah.
the private sector.
That's a tall order, but it sounds like workfare programs have the potential
They do.
to be a valuable tool for addressing both poverty and unemployment
Mm-hmm.
if they're implemented strategically. Now let's shift our focus to a topic that's often overlooked,
Okay.
but incredibly important. Who receives the benefits within a household?
That's a fascinating area of research.
It is.
It recognizes that households aren't monolithic entities.
Right.
There are power dynamics, gender roles,
Yeah.
and individual needs that can influence how resources are allocated and who benefits most from social protection programs.
It's about understanding those internal dynamics and recognizing that simply targeting a household might not be enough
Exactly.
to ensure that everyone within that household benefits equally.
And one of the key questions researchers have been exploring
Mhm.
is whether targeting benefits to women
Okay.
has a greater impact on household well-being, particularly for children.
That makes sense.
Right.
Mothers often play a central role
They do.
in their children's health, education, and
Yeah.
overall development.
And studies have shown that when women control a larger share of household resources,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to invest more in their children's health, nutrition, and education.
So it's not just about giving families money.
No.
It's about empowering women
It is.
to make choices that benefit their families.
Exactly. And this can have ripple effects that extend beyond the household.
How so?
When women are empowered, communities thrive.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
But I imagine the research on this is still evolving.
It is.
Yeah.
And there are many factors to consider, including cultural norms, gender roles,
Right.
and the specific types of benefits being provided.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but it's a crucial one to keep exploring
It is.
if we want to design programs that truly maximize impact.
Right.
Now, I'm really intrigued by the concept of big push or graduation programs.
Okay.
They seem to take a completely different approach
Yeah.
to poverty alleviation.
Graduation programs are based on the idea of poverty traps.
Okay.
The idea is that sometimes a small boost isn't enough to lift people out of poverty.
Right.
They need a more substantial and sustained intervention to break free from the cycle of deprivation.
So it's not just about providing a temporary safety net.
Right.
It's about equipping people with the tools and resources
Yeah.
they need to become self-sufficient.
Exactly. And one way to do this is through productive asset transfers.
I've heard about this.
Yeah.
It's like giving someone a cow, a sewing machine, or some other income-generating asset
Yeah.
that can help them start a business or improve their livelihood.
That's the idea. But graduation programs often go beyond just asset transfers.
Okay.
They typically involve a bundle of interventions, including training,
Mm-hmm.
financial literacy education,
Okay.
savings, support,
Yeah.
and even coaching and mentoring.
So it's like a holistic approach, addressing multiple dimensions of poverty and empowering people
It is.
to take control of their own economic futures.
Yeah.
Do we have any evidence that this works?
There have been a number of successful graduation programs in various countries,
Like where?
including Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Ghana, Honduras, India, Pakistan, and Peru. These programs have demonstrated significant and sustained improvements
Okay.
in income, consumption, asset ownership, and overall well-being.
So it seems like graduation programs aren't a quick fix, but a long-term investment
Oh, yeah.
in people's potential.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And while they require significant upfront investments,
Mm-hmm.
the long-term returns can be substantial.
It's about shifting the focus from short-term relief to long-term empowerment.
It is.
And speaking of innovation, we can't ignore the impact of digital technology on social protection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The digital revolution is transforming how these programs are designed, implemented, and monitored.
We're talking about things like mobile money, right? Where
Mhm.
people can receive benefits directly on their phone.
That's a prime example.
Yeah.
Digital delivery has the potential to make programs more efficient, transparent, and accessible,
Right.
especially for those who are excluded from traditional systems. Imagine being able to send cash transfers to remote villages without having to rely on physical infrastructure or intermediaries.
Yeah, it's about leveraging technology to bridge the gap between those in need and the services designed to help them.
And it goes beyond just cash transfers.
Okay.
Digital platforms can be used for everything from registering beneficiaries to monitoring program outcomes
Right.
to providing financial literacy training.
It's about harnessing the power of technology
It is.
to make social protection more effective and inclusive.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that digital systems are not a silver bullet.
Right. Not everyone has access to technology, and digital literacy varies widely.
Exactly. And there are also issues of trust and privacy to consider.
Yeah. It's about ensuring that digital solutions are designed with equity and accessibility in mind.
It is.
A study comparing preferences for mobile money versus electricity subsidies in Kenya and Ghana
Right.
found that people's preferences were shaped by their familiarity with technology. In Kenya, where mobile money is widespread, people preferred mobile money transfers. But in Ghana, where mobile money adoption is lower,
Yeah.
people actually preferred electricity subsidies.
That's fascinating.
So it's not just about the technology itself, but about how it fits into people's lives
It is.
and their existing systems of trust and exchange.
Exactly. Digital solutions need to be tailored to the specific context and the needs of the population.
Yeah,
It's not about imposing a one-size-fits-all technological solution.
right.
It's about using technology to empower people and give them more control over their lives.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
There seems to be a whole world of possibilities when it comes to leveraging technology
There is.
for social protection.
It's an area that's ripe for innovation.
This has been an eye-opening exploration of different program types.
Yeah.
Who knew there were so many ways to design social protection?
Lots of tools.
It's like a whole toolbox of approaches,
It is.
each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
But ultimately, it's all about reducing poverty, building resilience,
Right.
and creating a more equitable and just society.
Couldn't agree more.
Now let's delve into the final piece
Okay.
of this social protection puzzle. Mitigating risks. This is where we move beyond just addressing poverty and explore the world of social insurance. Social insurance, something we often take for granted in developed countries.
Yeah,
But in developing economies, it's a whole different ballgame.
it really is.
Yeah.
We're talking about providing a safety net for like those unexpected events
Right.
that can throw people's lives into complete turmoil.
Yeah.
Things like job loss, illness, or natural disasters.
Right. And these risks are often magnified in developing countries.
Yeah,
Where so many people work in the informal sector,
exactly.
they lack access to traditional safety nets and are more vulnerable to climate shocks.
That's a perfect storm.
Yeah, it makes you realize that something like unemployment insurance,
Right.
which is fairly standard in developed countries, becomes a huge challenge when you're dealing with an economy
Yeah,
where most people don't have formal jobs.
exactly. Imagine trying to verify unemployment
Right.
when people don't have pay stubs or official employment records.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredibly difficult, and it opens the door to fraud and abuse.
So if the traditional model of unemployment insurance doesn't work,
Yeah.
what are the alternatives?
Well, one approach that several countries have adopted
Mm-hmm.
is mandated severance pay.
Okay, so instead of receiving ongoing benefits
Right.
after losing a job,
Yeah,
workers get a lump sum payment from their employer.
exactly. It's like a buffer to help them get back on their feet.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
But I imagine there are also drawbacks
there are.
to this approach.
For starters, severance pay can make employers more hesitant to hire new workers,
Okay.
especially in industries with volatile employment patterns.
Right.
It adds a layer of financial risk.
Yeah, it's like a built-in cost
It is.
that makes businesses more cautious about expanding their workforce.
Exactly. And for workers,
Yeah.
receiving a lump sum payment means they have to manage that money carefully.
Right, to ensure that it lasts
Yeah.
until they find a new job.
There's a risk of overspending
Yeah.
or making poor financial decisions
Yeah, of course.
if you're not used to managing a large sum of money.
It's a lot of responsibility to place on individuals,
It is.
especially those who are already struggling financially.
Yeah.
Are there any other options for providing unemployment support in developing countries?
Another promising approach is the use of unemployment savings accounts.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of relying on employers or the government,
Mm-hmm.
individuals build up their own savings to protect themselves against job loss.
So it's like a personalized insurance policy.
Exactly. And several countries, including Colombia, Chile, Indonesia, and Mexico,
Wow.
have implemented variations of this system.
It's interesting to see how different countries are coming up with creative solutions
Yeah, it is.
to address this challenge of unemployment in the informal sector.
It's a testament to their ingenuity.
It is.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears and talk about disability insurance.
Okay.
This is another area where the informal nature of developing economies presents a significant challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to prove disability and inability to work
Right.
when you don't have formal employment records or medical documentation.
Oh, yeah, that's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare.
So how do you even begin to design a disability insurance system
Right.
in that context?
Well, one approach that many countries have taken is to integrate disability considerations into their existing cash transfer programs.
Okay.
Instead of having a separate disability insurance program,
Right.
they prioritize people with disabilities when determining eligibility for cash transfers.
It's like streamlining the system and using existing infrastructure
Exactly.
to address a pressing need.
It is, but it's not a perfect solution.
Of course not, yeah.
It only helps those who are already poor enough to qualify
Right.
for those programs.
Hmm.
And it might not provide adequate support for those with severe disabilities.
So it's a step in the right direction.
It is,
But there's still a long way to go
definitely.
to ensure that people with disabilities have access to the support they need.
I agree.
Now let's talk about an issue that's particularly important for women.
Okay.
Maternity leave and childcare.
These are essential supports for working mothers,
Yeah.
but they're often lacking in developing countries,
Right.
especially for those working in the informal sector.
Right. And this lack of support can perpetuate a vicious cycle
They can.
of poverty and inequality.
It's a double whammy.
Yeah.
You're less likely to have access to these benefits if you're working informally,
Right.
and you're also more likely to need them because your income is more precarious and your job security is lower.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual women and families.
Yeah,
It's about the economy as a whole.
it is.
When women are unable to participate fully in the workforce, everyone loses out.
Everyone does.
So what can be done to break this cycle?
Well, some countries have made significant progress in expanding access to maternity leave,
Okay.
even for informal workers.
Okay.
Chile is a great example.
Okay.
They doubled the length of paid maternity leave,
Wow.
and it led to significant improvements in women's health, breastfeeding rates,
Okay.
and even their children's cognitive development.
That's amazing. It shows that investing in mothers and families has far-reaching benefits.
It does. And what's really interesting is that the women who had access to longer maternity leave
Yeah.
were also more likely to be back in the workforce a year later.
So it seems that supporting women's caregiving responsibilities doesn't hinder economic growth.
It doesn't.
It actually boosts it.
It does. It challenges the notion that maternity leave is a drain on the economy.
Right. It's a reminder that investing in families is an investment in the future workforce.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to childcare, the situation in developing countries is more mixed.
Okay.
Formal childcare services are often scarce and expensive,
Right.
particularly for low-income families.
So what options do working mothers have?
Many rely on informal childcare arrangements,
Okay.
like family members or neighbors.
Yeah.
But these arrangements can be unreliable
Right.
and limit women's work opportunities.
Because if your childcare falls through,
Yeah,
you can't go to work.
exactly.
Which can trap women in low-paying part-time jobs
Right.
that offer more flexibility but less security and earning potential.
That's a common scenario.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need to invest in affordable, accessible, and quality childcare services.
It's about creating a system that supports women's work
It is.
and allows them to fully participate in the economy.
Exactly. And there's compelling evidence that investing in childcare pays off.
Okay.
Studies in countries as diverse as Mexico, Indonesia, Brazil, and Kenya
Wow.
have shown that access to childcare leads to increased women's labor force participation and earnings.
It's a win-win situation.
It is.
It benefits women, families, and the economy as a whole.
Couldn't agree more.
Now let's move on to another essential type of social insurance. Health insurance.
Okay.
Health insurance is a lifeline in any context,
It is.
but it's especially critical in developing countries
Yeah,
where out-of-pocket healthcare expenses can be catastrophic for families.
they can be.
It's about providing financial protection against the unexpected, ensuring that people can access the healthcare they need
Right.
without facing financial ruin.
Exactly. And the research on health insurance in developing countries is fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
It highlights both the tremendous potential and the unique challenges of providing this type of social insurance.
Let's start with the potential.
Okay.
What are some of the key ways health insurance can improve people's lives?
Well, one of the most obvious benefits is financial protection.
Okay.
Health insurance helps people avoid those catastrophic healthcare expenses
Right.
that could push them into poverty.
Mm-hmm.
It provides a buffer against the unpredictable nature of illness and injury.
It's like having a safety net that catches you when you fall.
That's a great analogy.
And beyond just preventing financial hardship,
Yeah.
health insurance also allows people to access healthcare services
Right.
that they might not be able to afford otherwise.
Exactly. And there's a growing body of evidence showing that health insurance can lead to increased healthcare utilization,
Okay.
better management of chronic conditions, and even reduced mortality rates.
That's powerful stuff.
It is.
It seems like health insurance has the potential to transform lives and communities.
It does. But of course, there are also challenges to providing health insurance in developing countries.
Like what are some of the biggest hurdles?
One of the biggest challenges is adverse selection,
Oh, yeah, adverse selection.
which we've touched upon before.
Remind me what that is in this context.
It's the tendency for people who are more likely to need health care
Okay.
to be more likely to buy health insurance.
Nay.
If you're healthy and don't anticipate needing much health care,
Yeah.
you might be less inclined to pay for insurance.
Right.
But this creates a problem for insurers
Okay.
because if the risk pool is skewed towards those who are more likely to use healthcare services,
Yeah.
it drives up costs for everyone.
So it's a vicious cycle.
It is.
The sicker people are more likely to buy insurance.
Yeah.
Which makes insurance more expensive, which discourages healthier people from buying insurance.
That's the dilemma.
Yeah.
And this problem is often exacerbated in developing countries
Okay.
where many people work in the informal sector and don't have access to employer-sponsored health insurance.
So how do you break this cycle?
One solution is government subsidies,
Okay.
which can make health insurance more affordable for low-income households. Studies in Ghana and Indonesia, for instance,
Okay.
have shown that subsidies can encourage healthier individuals to enroll, which helps to balance out the risk pool and make the system more financially sustainable.
It's about creating a system that works for everyone,
It is.
not just those who are already at higher risk.
Right.
But subsidies aren't a perfect solution, are they?
They're not. They can be expensive,
Yeah.
and they don't always completely eliminate the problem
Right.
of adverse selection.
Another approach that some countries have tried is bundling.
Bundling.
Yeah, like a cable package
Yeah, it's a similar concept.
with TV, internet, and phone service.
Instead of offering health insurance as a standalone product,
Okay.
you bundle it with other types of insurance, like life insurance or disability insurance.
I see.
This makes it less appealing for people to cherry pick
Right.
and only buy health insurance when they think they need it.
It's a clever way to nudge people towards more comprehensive coverage.
Exactly. And studies have shown that it can be effective in reducing adverse selection.
But beyond these strategies, one of the biggest challenges for health insurance in developing countries is simply the lack of infrastructure and administrative capacity.
It's difficult to collect premiums and enforce mandates
Right.
when you're dealing with a large informal sector.
So this creates a dilemma for policymakers.
It does.
Do you try to extend health insurance to informal workers, even though it's difficult to manage and enforce?
Yeah.
Or do you focus on providing free or heavily subsidized health care
Right.
to everyone, regardless of their employment status?
Those are tough choices,
They are.
each with its own set of trade-offs.
Yeah, there's no easy answer.
No, there's not.
It's about finding the right approach for the specific context, taking into account the political will, the available resources, and the capacity of the system to manage complexity.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, let's move on to another critical type of social insurance.
Okay.
Pensions.
Pensions are all about ensuring that people have income security in their old age, a safety net for when they're no longer able to work and earn a living.
It's about aging with dignity,
It is.
knowing that you'll have the financial resources to support yourself and maintain a decent standard of living.
Exactly. But designing effective pension systems can be incredibly challenging,
Right.
especially in developing countries with large informal sectors.
Right. How do you collect contributions when people aren't receiving regular paychecks?
Exactly.
How do you ensure that the system is financially sustainable
Right.
when the population is aging rapidly?
It's a big question.
These are just a few of the questions policymakers grapple with.
Lots of questions, yeah.
It seems like the same themes keep coming up. Informality, limited resources,
Yeah.
lack of administrative capacity.
These are recurring challenges that shape the entire social protection landscape
Right.
in developing countries.
But despite these challenges, many countries have made significant strides
They have.
in expanding pension coverage.
They have.
What are some of the innovative approaches they've taken?
Well, many developing countries have adopted a mix of different pension systems,
Okay.
including contributory systems where individuals save a portion of their income for retirement, non-contributory systems where the government provides basic pensions
Okay.
to all elderly citizens,
Right.
and even individual savings accounts that offer tax incentives or matching contributions.
It's like a patchwork of solutions, each tailored to the specific context.
Exactly. And as countries develop,
Yeah.
they often expand their pension systems to cover more people and provide greater benefits. It's a dynamic process that reflects the evolving needs of the population.
It's inspiring to see how countries are finding creative ways to provide income security for their aging populations.
It is, but it's also important to acknowledge that these pension systems face significant challenges,
Of course.
particularly in terms of financial sustainability.
Especially as life expectancy increases.
Yeah.
And the ratio of workers to retirees shrinks. It's like a demographic time bomb.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It highlights the need to carefully manage pension funds, adjust contribution rates as needed, and explore innovative solutions like multi-pillar systems
Okay.
that combine different types of pension schemes to spread the risk.
So it's about thinking long-term
It is.
and ensuring that these systems can support current and future generations of retirees.
Exactly.
Now let's touch on a type of insurance that might seem a bit unusual,
Okay.
but is actually incredibly important in many developing countries. Funeral insurance.
It might seem like a niche market,
Yeah.
but funerals can be a major expense in many cultures.
It's about honoring the deceased and providing comfort to the grieving family.
Right.
But it can also place a huge financial burden on those left behind,
It can.
especially in low-income community.
Precisely. And in developing countries where savings are scarce
Right.
and access to formal financial services is limited,
Yeah.
the cost of a funeral can be devastating.
So funeral insurance provides a way for people to prepare for this inevitable expense
Yeah.
and protect their families from financial hardship.
Exactly. And while formal funeral insurance policies are available in some countries, many people rely on informal arrangements,
Yeah.
like burial societies, community-based savings schemes, or even just pooling resources among family and friends.
So it's a reminder that social protection often extends beyond formal systems and policies.
It does.
It's about communities coming together to support each other in times of need.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about one final type of insurance
Okay.
that's often overlooked, but can be critically important
Yeah.
in developing countries.
Right.
Property insurance.
You're right. It's not something that typically makes headlines,
No.
but the reality is that people in developing countries face significant risks
Yeah.
to their property, whether it's from natural disasters,
Mm-hmm.
theft, or even just everyday accidents.
And without insurance, these events can be financially devastating.
But they can be, wiping out years of savings
Right.
and pushing families into poverty.
Exactly. And yet, property insurance is often scarce and expensive in developing countries.
It is.
Why is that? What are some of the barriers to providing this type of insurance?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the lack of reliable data
Okay.
on property values and risks.
Right.
This makes it difficult for insurers to accurately assess and price policies,
Yeah.
which can lead to higher premiums
Mm-hmm.
or a reluctance to offer coverage at all.
So it's a bit of a catch-22.
It is.
The risks are high, but the data is scarce,
Yeah.
which makes insurance more expensive or less accessible.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of moral hazard,
Right.
which is the risk that people who have insurance might be less careful
Yeah.
about protecting their property.
Because they know they'll be compensated if something goes wrong.
Right. And this can be a problem in areas where crime rates are high
Sure.
or law enforcement is weak.
So it seems like a perfect storm of challenges.
It is.
High risks, scarce data, moral hazard concerns.
Yeah.
No wonder property insurance is often underdeveloped
Right.
in these contexts.
It's a complex issue,
Yeah.
and it highlights the need for creative solutions,
Like what?
perhaps through public-private partnerships,
Right.
community-based insurance schemes, or even innovative approaches like index-based insurance.
Okay.
That triggers payouts based on predefined events
Yeah.
rather than individual claims.
It's about finding ways to make insurance accessible and affordable so that people can protect themselves and their assets from potential losses.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Wow, that was a deep dive indeed.
It was.
We covered so much ground, from targeting challenges to different program types to the nuances of social insurance in the context of developing economies.
A lot of information.
It's clear that this is a field that's constantly evolving and innovating.
It is. And what I find so inspiring is the resilience and creativity of those working on the ground
Yeah.
to design and implement programs
Yeah.
that make a real difference.
I agree. It's a reminder that even in the face of daunting challenges, there's always room for hope and progress.
Well said.
And for our listeners who want to learn more about this fascinating and complex world of social protection in developing countries,
Right?
be sure to check out the resources we've included in the show notes.
Good stuff.
We've got links to some of the research papers and reports we discussed, as well as organizations that are doing incredible work in this field.
Great resources.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing, deep divers.